Welcome, dear traveler of the night. Close your eyes and let your body sink deeper into comfort. Tonight, you've found a sanctuary where science meets serenity, where the wonders of the human mind unfold like petals opening slowly to moonlight. I'm here to guide you on a peaceful journey through the psychology of sleep and consciousness, each fact delivered in soothing rhythm, each word chosen to help you drift effortlessly toward rest. There's nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to do. Just breathe and allow yourself to simply be. If you enjoy this journey, please subscribe and leave a comment below about which psychological truth touched your heart tonight. But for now, just breathe. Let your eyes grow heavy, heavy as stones worn smooth by centuries of patient water. Let your mind open like a night-blooming flower, ready to receive the gentle rain of understanding. And so, we begin. Long before we understood the chemistry of sleep, before laboratories hummed with equipment measuring rapid eye movements, the human mind was already crafting its nightly theater. Dreams, those strange and beautiful visitors of the sleeping hours, emerge from a process refined across millions of years of mammalian evolution. When you close your eyes tonight and drift into that mysterious realm, you join an unbroken chain of dreaming creatures stretching back through time like a river flowing toward an ancient sea. The mechanism is elegant in its complexity, patient in its unfolding. As your consciousness dims and the world of waking fades like stars disappearing into dawn, your brainstem, that most ancient part of your neural architecture, begins to send random signals upward through the landscape of your mind. These signals, chaotic and wild as wind through autumn leaves, reach your cortex, which responds the way humans have always responded to mystery. It weaves a story. It creates meaning from randomness, narrative from noise, just as our ancestors once connected stars into constellations, finding bears and hunters in the scattered light of distant suns. This storytelling reflex runs deep, deeper than culture, deeper than language itself. It is carved into the bedrock of what makes us human, shaped gradually by the slow hands of natural selection. Each dream you experience tonight connects you to every human who has ever slept, every mind that has ever attempted to make sense of those strange nocturnal journeys. Breathe deeply and know that your dreaming mind is performing a ritual as old as consciousness itself, ancient and patient as stone. Deep within the sanctuary of your skull, a garden grows. Not a garden of earth and leaves, but something far more miraculous, a garden of connection, of possibility, of endless transformation. Your brain, that 3-pound universe cradled in bone, contains approximately 86 billion neurons, each one reaching out to others like trees extending roots through dark soil, forming connections called synapses. And here's the wonder that should fill you with quiet awe. This garden never stops growing, never stops changing, never stops responding to the touch of experience. Scientists once believed that the adult brain was fixed, immutable, like a sculpture carved from marble. Beautiful perhaps, but forever frozen in its final form. However, this belief, like many comfortable certainties, dissolved when examined closely. The truth revealed itself slowly and carefully. Over decades of patient observation, your brain remains plastic, malleable, and responsive to the world around you and the thoughts within you. This quality, called neuroplasticity, means that with each experience, each thought, each moment of attention, you are subtly reshaping the landscape of your mind. When you learn something new, a language, song, a skill, your neurons reach out and form new connections, like vines growing slowly across a garden wall. When you practice kindness, the neural pathways associated with empathy strengthen, growing thicker and more efficient, like paths through a forest that become wider and clearer with use. Even now, As you listen to these words, as you absorb these ideas, gentle changes are occurring in the architecture of your consciousness. You are not the same person who began listening to this recording. You are always becoming, always transforming, always growing in ways too subtle to see, but too profound to ignore. Let this knowledge comfort you as you drift towards sleep. Tomorrow, you will wake to a brain that has been quietly tending its garden through the night, pruning unnecessary connections, strengthening useful ones, maintaining the miraculous landscape of your consciousness. Rest now, knowing that growth continues, even in darkness, even in silence, patient as seasons. Across the ages, before words existed to name the feeling, before language could capture the experience, there was touch. The gentle pressure of skin against skin, the reassuring warmth of another presence. These sensations precede civilization itself, stretching back to countless generations of our mammalian ancestors. When an infant is held, when a hand reaches out to comfort, when someone you trust places their palm against your shoulder, you are participating in a form of communication older than speech, more fundamental than any language that tongues have ever shaped. The science of this comfort unfolds slowly, like a flower opening to morning light. When you experience a gentle, caring touch, your body responds with a cascade of chemical changes, each one contributing to a sense of safety and peace. Your nervous system releases oxytocin, sometimes called the bonding hormone, which flows through your bloodstream like a river carrying calm to every cell. Your heart rate slows, finding a gentler rhythm. Your blood pressure decreases as if your body itself is exhaling, releasing tension accumulated through the day. Stress hormones like cortisol diminish, their sharp edges softening into something manageable, something that no longer demands your constant attention. But the story goes deeper still, down into the very architecture of your nervous system. Your skin contains specialized nerve endings called C-tactile afferents, designed specifically to respond to gentle, caring touch, the kind of touch that moves slowly across skin, that communicates safety rather than threat. These nerves send signals directly to the emotional centers of your brain, bypassing the rational, analytical regions and speaking instead to the ancient parts of you that understand comfort without needing to name it. Even now, you can activate some of these same pathways yourself. Place your hand gently on your chest, feeling the rise and fall of your breath. Let your palm rest there, worn and steady, like a friend offering comfort. Feel how this simple gesture, this act of self-touch, carries echoes of every time you were held and comforted, every moment of safety you've ever known. A gesture is small, but it connects you to something vast, the entire history of mammalian bonding, the long story of comfort given and received. Breathe into this feeling and let your eyes grow heavy. While you sleep tonight, while your conscious mind wanders through the strange territories of dreams, another process unfolds with the patience of geological time. Your brain, that tireless custodian of experience, will spend these quiet hours sorting through the day's events, deciding what to keep and what to release, transferring memories from temporary storage into the permanent archives of your mind. This process, called memory consolidation, happens slowly, carefully, like a librarian arranging books on shelves that stretch toward infinity. During waking hours, experiences are initially stored in a region called the hippocampus, a seahorse-shaped structure nestled deep within your brain. Think of it as a holding area, a staging ground where new memories wait like travelers in a train station. But the hippocampus has limited capacity, and so each night, during the deeper stages of sleep, these temporary memories are gradually transferred to the cortex, where they can be stored indefinitely, woven into the larger tapestry of who you are. This transfer is not random or haphazard. Your brain, in its ancient wisdom, preferentially consolidates memories that seem important, meaningful, or emotionally significant. It strengthens the connections between related memories, helping you see patterns, understand relationships, and solve problems that seemed insurmountable during the day. This is why sleep improves learning, why a good night's rest can bring clarity to confusion, and why sometimes the solution to a problem appears as if by magic after you've stopped consciously thinking about it. The magic is real, but it's the magic of biology, of neural processes refined across millions of years of evolution. Studies have shown that when people learn a new skill, playing a musical instrument, navigating a complex route, solving a particular type of puzzle, their performance improves significantly after a night of sleep. Even without additional practice, the learning continues in darkness, in silence, while consciousness rests. Your brain is always working on your behalf, always tending to the garden of memory, always strengthening the pathways that will serve you tomorrow. So tonight, as you surrender to sleep, trust in this ancient process. Trust that your brain knows what to keep and what to release, what to strengthen and what to let fade. You don't need to control this process any more than you need to consciously direct your heart to beat or your lungs to fill with air. The work will be done for you, patient and thorough, while you dream. Rest now and let the consolidation begin. Deep within the architecture of your brain, there exists a network of neurons that fires not only when you perform an action, but also when you watch someone else perform that same action. These cells, discovered relatively recently in the slow unfolding of neuroscientific understanding, are called mirror neurons, and they represent one of the most beautiful mechanisms ever revealed by psychology and neuroscience. They are, in a sense, the biological foundation of empathy, the neural substrate of our ability to understand each other across the gap that separates one mind from another. When you watch someone smile, your mirror neurons activate the same neural pathways that fire when you yourself smile, creating a subtle echo of their experience within your own brain. When you see someone in pain, your mirror neurons help you simulate that pain, allowing you to understand what they're feeling, not through abstract reasoning, but through a kind of direct, embodied knowledge. This is not telepathy or magic. It is something even more profound. It is the way evolution has built bridges between isolated consciousnesses, creating the possibility of genuine connection in a universe of separate beings. The discovery of mirror neurons helps explain mysteries that have puzzled philosophers and psychologists for generations. Why does a baby imitate the facial expressions of adults? Why do we yawn when we see others yawn? Why does watching a skilled dancer fill us with a kinesthetic sense of their movement? Why can a great actor make us feel emotions that we know, rationally, are not real? All of these phenomena emerge from the mirror system, from neurons that blur the boundary between self and other, creating resonance between minds. This system develops early, very early, long before language or conscious thought. From the first days of life, human infants are already mirroring, already building the neural infrastructure that will allow them to navigate the social world, to understand others, to form the bonds that make human life possible. And this capacity continues to develop throughout life, shaped by experience, refined by practice. Every act of genuine attention to another person strengthens these pathways, making you more capable of empathy, more able to cross the bridge from your subjective experience to theirs. As you prepare for sleep tonight, reflect on the connections you share with others, connections that exist not just in memory or affection, but in the very structure of your nervous system. Your mirror neurons carry within them the potential for understanding, for compassion, for the recognition that other minds are as real and as rich as your own. This recognition, this biological capacity for empathy, makes possible every act of kindness, every moment of genuine connection. It is, in its way, miraculous. Breathe deeply and feel gratitude for the neurons that help you understand that you are not alone, that other minds exist alongside yours, separate but somehow knowable, distant but capable of being reached. Let your eyes grow heavy with this knowledge. Long before our ancestors developed language, before they painted on cave walls or carved tools from stone, they laughed. The capacity for laughter stretches back through deep time, through millions of years of primate evolution, appearing first not as a response to humor or wit, but as something more fundamental, a signal of play, of safety, of social bonding. When you laugh tonight, if anything brings that bubbling joy to the surface, you engage in a behavior older than humanity itself, ancient and patient as the slow movement of continents. Researchers have discovered that great apes, chimpanzees, gorillas, orangutans, all produce a vocalization that resembles laughter when they play. This laughter is different from human laughter, more of a panting, breathless sound, but it serves a similar function. It signals that what's happening is play, not aggression, that the roughhousing is friendly, not dangerous, that despite appearances, everyone is safe. This vocalization evolved gradually, shaped by the social needs of species that lived in complex groups, where the ability to maintain relationships and diffuse tension can mean the difference between survival and isolation. In humans, laughter evolved further, becoming more flexible, more nuanced, more capable of expressing subtle shades of meaning. We laugh not only during play, but also when we encounter surprise, when we recognize incongruity, and when we experience relief after tension. We laugh to show affiliation, to strengthen bonds, to signal that we share an understanding. We laugh at jokes, but we also laugh simply at being together, at recognizing each other's presence. The sound of laughter releases endorphins, those natural opiates that create feelings of pleasure and well-being. It reduces stress hormones, lowers blood pressure, and strengthens the immune system. Laughter is medicine, and it's medicine that evolution has been refining for millions of years. Studies have shown that people laugh far more frequently in social situations than in alone. We are 30 times more likely to laugh when we're with others than when we're by ourselves. This fact reveals something profound about the nature of laughter. It is fundamentally a social signal, a way of connecting, of creating resonance between minds. When a group of people laugh together, their breathing synchronizes, their neural activity aligns, and they momentarily become a unified organism, separate bodies experiencing a shared moment of joy. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, perhaps your lips curve into a slight smile, remembering some moment of laughter from the day, some instant of shared joy. That smile, that memory, connects you to an unbroken chain of laughing creatures stretching back through time, through countless generations of ancestors who found reasons to make that peculiar vocalization, that signal of connection and safety and play. Rest now, knowing that joy is written into your biology, that the capacity for laughter is part of your inheritance, patient and enduring as stone. Within every cell of your body, a tiny clock is ticking. Not a mechanical clock, but something far more elegant, a molecular oscillation, a cycle of gene expression that rises and falls like tides responding to the distant pull of the moon. These cellular clocks are synchronized by a master pacemaker in your brain, a small cluster of neurons in the hypothalamus that responds to light, to darkness, to the eternal rotation of Earth. Together, these clocks create what scientists call your circadian rhythm, the internal sense of time that governs when you feel alert and when you feel sleepy, when your body temperature rises and when it falls, when hormones are released into your bloodstream like scheduled trains departing from a station. This rhythm evolved slowly across billions of years, beginning with single-celled organisms that needed to coordinate their internal processes with the cycle of day and night. Even bacteria have circadian clocks, simple molecular mechanisms that allow them to anticipate the rising and setting of the sun. As life grew more complex, these timing systems grew more sophisticated, more nuanced, more capable of orchestrating the incredible complexity of multicellular existence. Your circadian rhythm is ancient beyond imagining, a gift from ancestors who swam in primordial seas, who first crawled onto land, who eventually stood upright and looked at the stars. The details of this rhythm are beautiful in their precision. As evening approaches and light fades, your master clock triggers the release of melatonin, a hormone that makes you feel drowsy, that prepares your body and mind for sleep. Your body temperature begins to drop, falling to its lowest point in the early hours of the morning. Your blood pressure decreases, your digestion slows. Everything is orchestrated, coordinated, timed with the patience of processes that have been refined across eons. And then, as morning approaches, even before you wake, your body begins preparing for the day ahead. Cortisol levels rise, providing energy. Body temperature increases. The production of melatonin ceases, allowing wakefulness to return. This rhythm is not arbitrary or random. It is deeply connected to the rotation of Earth, to the cycle that has governed life on this planet for as long as life has existed. When you honor this rhythm, when you go to sleep when your body asks for sleep and wake when light returns, you align yourself with something larger than individual preference or convenience. You participate in a pattern as old as the planet itself, as patient as the turning of seasons. Tonight, as melatonin flows through your veins, as your body temperature falls, as every system prepares for rest and restoration, feel gratitude for this ancient rhythm. You don't need to force sleep, don't need to struggle or strain. You need only to surrender to the cycle, to trust in the wisdom of processes refined across billions of years. Your body knows how to sleep, knows when to sleep, knows what to do in the dark hours. Let go and let the rhythm carry you. Breathe deeply and let your eyes grow heavy. There exists in psychology a curious phenomenon, a mystery that has puzzled researchers for decades. It is called childhood amnesia, and it refers to a simple but profound fact. You cannot remember the first years of your life. No matter how hard you try, no matter how deeply you search your memory, you will find no recollections from your infancy, no images from your first birthday, no narratives from the time before language. These years exist in your life story only through photographs taken by others, through stories told by parents and family, through evidence external to your own mind. The experiences themselves have vanished, erased not through trauma or suppression, but through the natural processes of development, worn away like ancient inscriptions on weathered stone. This amnesia is not a failure of memory. but a consequence of how memory develops, how the brain matures slowly, patiently, according to timelines established across millions of years of evolution. In infancy and early childhood, the hippocampus, that crucial structure for forming lasting memories, is still developing, still building the neural architecture necessary for memory consolidation. Moreover, the sense of self that allows for autobiographical memory, for the creation of narratives about your own life, has not yet fully emerged. A young child experiences the world vividly, intensely, but without the narrative structure that transforms experience into the kind of memories you can later recall and examine. Some researchers believe that memories from early childhood are not completely lost, but rather become inaccessible because they were encoded differently, in a form that the adult brain cannot easily retrieve. It's as if these memories were written in a language you no longer speak, stored in a format compatible with your current mental operating system. Others suggest that the rapid generation of new neurons during early childhood, neurogenesis, may interfere with old memories, overwriting them in the process of building new neural infrastructure. The truth likely combines elements of both explanations, along with others not yet discovered. The oldest memories that most people can reliably access come from around age 3 or 4, and even these early memories are often fragmentary, disconnected, more like snapshots than a continuous narrative. They have a dreamlike quality, these early recollections, as if they exist on the border between memory and imagination. And perhaps that's appropriate, for in those early years, before language fully shapes thought, experience itself must have had a different quality, more sensory, more immediate, less structured by the categories and concepts that later organize consciousness. As you drift toward sleep tonight, reflect on the mystery of your earliest years, those vanished times that nonetheless shaped you profoundly, that established patterns in your nervous system, that created the foundation upon which everything else was built. Even though you cannot remember these years, they remain part of you, encoded not in narrative memory, but in procedural memory, in emotional associations, in the basic sense of whether the world is safe or dangerous, whether you can trust or must remain vigilant. Your oldest experiences are lost to conscious recollection, but preserved in deeper ways, patient and enduring as stone. Let your eyes grow heavy and rest in the knowledge that you are more than what you remember, that your history extends into regions of time that consciousness cannot illuminate, mysterious and profound. Human beings are creatures of habit, shaped by evolution to find comfort in repetition, in the predictable unfolding of familiar patterns. This preference for routine is not weakness or inflexibility, but adaptive wisdom, the result of natural selection favoring organisms that could conserve mental energy by automatizing regular behaviors. When you develop a routine, when you perform the same sequence of actions at the same time each day, you create what psychologists call a habit loop, a neural pathway that becomes so well established, so deeply carved into the landscape of your brain, that it eventually requires almost no conscious effort to traverse. The formation of habits happens slowly, gradually, through repetition extended across time. Each time you perform a behavior in a specific context, the association between that context and that behavior strengthens slightly, like a path through a forest that becomes a little clearer with each traveler who walks it. Neuroscientists have discovered that as habits form, activity shifts from the prefrontal cortex, the region associated with conscious decision-making and effort, to the basal ganglia, deeper structures that can execute behaviors automatically, without conscious attention. This shift frees up mental resources for other tasks, allowing you to navigate familiar routines while your conscious mind focuses elsewhere. Consider your bedtime routine, if you have one. Perhaps you brush your teeth, wash your face, change into night clothes, and arrange your pillows in a particular way. These actions, repeated night after night, have likely become so automatic that you can perform them while thinking about something entirely different or while thinking about nothing at all. This automaticity is a gift from your nervous system, a way of making life easier, more manageable, less demanding of constant conscious control. And beyond the practical benefits, routines provide psychological comfort. They create structure in an unpredictable world, offering small islands of certainty in the ocean of chance. They signal to your nervous system that this is a safe, familiar situation, reducing the vigilance that would otherwise remain active, allowing relaxation to deepen. Research has shown that people who maintain regular sleep routines, going to bed and waking at consistent times, tend to sleep better than those with irregular schedules. The consistency itself seems to strengthen the circadian rhythm, making the transition to sleep smoother, more natural. Your body learns when to expect sleep, when to begin the cascade of physiological changes that prepare you for rest. The routine becomes a signal, a cue that sleep is approaching, and your nervous system responds accordingly, patient and reliable as the tides. Tonight, notice the routines you've developed, the small rituals that mark your transition from waking to sleeping. Appreciate them not as rigid requirements, but as gifts you've given yourself, pathways you've carved through repetition, ways of making the journey to sleep a little easier, a little more certain. Each routine is a small kindness to your future self, a way of communicating across time. This is what we do here. This is how we prepare for rest. This is how we honor the need for sleep. Breathe deeply and let your routines carry you, patient as water shaping stone across centuries. We tend to think of forgetting as a failure, as evidence of a memory system that's somehow broken or inadequate. But research suggests that forgetting is not a bug in the system, but a feature. Not a weakness, but a form of intelligence refined across millions of years of evolution. Your brain is designed to forget, carefully and selectively, in ways that actually improve your ability to function in the world. This capacity for selective forgetting is one of the mind's most useful traits, patient and subtle as erosion smoothing rough edges from stone. Consider the alternative, a memory system that preserved everything with perfect fidelity, that retained every detail of every moment you've ever experienced. Such a system would quickly become overwhelmed, drowning in trivial details, unable to distinguish important information from the vast sea of irrelevant sensory data that washes over you every second of every day. You would remember every time you tied your shoes, every meal you ate, every conversation about the weather, every glance at a clock. The archive would be complete but useless, like a library where every book ever written is shelved randomly, with no organization, no way to find what you actually need. Forgetting solves this problem by acting as a filter, gradually removing information that seems irrelevant or outdated, making space for new learning, and helping you focus on what matters. The process is intelligent, guided by principles that psychologists have spent decades trying to understand. Memories that are frequently retrieved stay strong, while those that are never accessed gradually fade, like paths through a forest that disappear when no one walks them. Memories associated with strong emotions tend to persist, while neutral experiences slip away more quickly. Information that connects to your existing knowledge network is retained more readily than isolated facts that fit nowhere in your mental landscape. However, Forgetting enables generalization, which is crucial for learning and problem solving. When you forget specific details of individual experiences, you're left with the general pattern, the abstract principle, the lesson that can be applied in new situations. This abstraction is how you learn concepts, rather than just memorizing instances. It's how you recognize a new dog as a dog, even though you've never seen that particular dog before. How you navigate a new city, even though you've never walked these specific streets. How you understand a new problem as similar to problems you've solved before. Forgetting the details allows you to see the forest instead of being lost among the trees. There's even evidence that sleep, the state you're drifting toward now, plays an active role in forgetting, helping your brain identify which connections to weaken, which memories to allow to fade. During sleep, the brain doesn't just consolidate important memories, it also actively prunes unnecessary connections, maintaining the efficiency and clarity of the neural network. This pruning is as important as the preservation, like a gardener who removes weeds and dead leaves so that healthy plants can flourish. So tonight, as you release the day and move towards sleep, release also the burden of trying to remember everything. Trust that your brain knows what to keep and what to let go, what to preserve and what to allow to fade gently into the background. Forgetting is not failure, but wisdom. Not loss, but liberation. Let your mind do its work, patient and thorough, sorting and sifting through the experiences of the day. Breathe deeply and let go. Let your eyes grow heavy, knowing that forgetting is part of the process, part of the intelligence that evolution has built into the very structure of your mind. Beneath the surface of your conscious awareness, beneath the thoughts you can articulate and the intentions you can name, lies a vast realm of mental processing that happens without your knowledge or control. Psychologists estimate that the unconscious mind processes approximately 11 million bits of information per second, while consciousness can handle only about 40 bits per second. This means that the vast majority of your mental life, more than 99.9%, occurs beneath the threshold of awareness, like the bulk of an iceberg hidden beneath the sea's surface, massive and silent and profoundly influential. This unconscious processing is not mysterious or supernatural. It is the result of neural activity that doesn't reach the level of conscious awareness, but shapes your behavior, your judgments, your feelings, your choices. Your unconscious mind monitors your environment for threats, registers subtle social cues, retrieves relevant memories, generates emotional responses, maintains bodily functions, and performs countless other tasks simultaneously, all without requiring conscious attention. If you had to consciously control all of these processes, you would be immediately overwhelmed, paralyzed by the sheer volume of information requiring attention. The discovery of unconscious processing was one of psychology's greatest insights, gradually revealed through decades of careful experimentation. Researchers found that people can be influenced by stimuli they never consciously perceived, that judgments can be affected by information people don't remember receiving, and that complex problems are sometimes solved during periods when conscious attention is directed elsewhere. The unconscious mind is not a dumping ground for repressed desires, as early psychologists sometimes imagined, but an incredibly sophisticated processing system, refined across millions of years to handle the complexity of existence. Consider how you walk. You don't consciously control each muscle contraction. Don't deliberately calculate the angle of each joint. Don't think about balance and weight distribution and momentum. All of this is handled automatically by unconscious processes that have been trained through years of practice. Or consider how you understand language. You don't consciously parse the grammatical structure of each sentence you hear. Don't deliberately access the dictionary definitions of each word, and don't think about the rules governing syntax and semantics. The meaning simply arrives in consciousness, delivered by unconscious processes working behind the scenes, fast and efficient as lightning. This unconscious processing continues during sleep. Even in the deepest stages of unconsciousness, your brain never truly rests, never falls completely silent. It continues monitoring, processing, working on problems, consolidating memories, and maintaining the systems that keep you alive. In a sense, you are always thinking, always processing, always working, even when consciousness has dissolved completely. The ocean of the unconscious never sleeps, patient and deep and endlessly active. Tonight, as you move towards sleep, as consciousness begins to fade like light leaving the sky, trust in the unconscious processes that will continue throughout the night. You don't need to stay vigilant. You don't need to remain in control. The deeper parts of your mind will handle everything. Will keep watch while you rest. Will continue the work of living while you dream. Surrender to this deeper intelligence, older than consciousness itself, patient as the slow turning of the earth. Breathe, and let your eyes grow heavy. In every moment, your senses are flooded with information. Light enters your eyes, carrying data about colors, shapes, movements, and distances. Sound waves reach your ears, bringing news of voices, footsteps, rustling leaves, and distant traffic. Your skin reports pressure, temperature, and texture. Your nose detects countless molecules floating in the air. Your tongue registers tastes. Your inner ear signals your position and space, the pull of gravity, and the movement of your head. If you had to consciously process all of this information simultaneously, you would be instantly overwhelmed, drowning in sensation, unable to focus on anything or to act coherently. Attention solves this problem by serving as a filter, a spotlight, a mechanism for selecting some information for detailed processing, while allowing the rest to remain in the background. When you pay attention to something, these words, for instance, that information receives privileged access to consciousness and to the neural resources that allow for deep processing, analysis, and integration with existing knowledge. Meanwhile, other information is suppressed, kept out of awareness, handled by unconscious processes, or simply ignored. Attention is how you navigate the overwhelming complexity of existence, how you find signal in the noise, how you create coherence from chaos. The mechanisms of attention evolved slowly, shaped by the demands of survival in complex environments where dangers could emerge from any direction, but where looking everywhere at once was impossible. Natural selection favored organisms that could flexibly direct their processing resources, that could focus intensely when necessary, but also maintain peripheral awareness of potential threats. In humans, attention systems have become remarkably sophisticated, capable of sustaining focus on a single task for extended periods, of dividing attention between multiple streams of information, and of quickly shifting from one focus to another when circumstances demand. Neuroscientists have identified multiple attention networks in the brain, each serving different functions, each with its own neural signature. There is the alerting network, which maintains a state of general readiness to respond. There is the orienting network, which directs attention towards specific locations in space or toward particular features of experience. And there is the executive network, which resolves conflicts between competing demands, maintains focus in the face of distraction, and controls voluntary shifts of attention. These networks work together seamlessly, creating the unified experience of attention, though they can be dissociated under special circumstances or as a result of brain damage. As you prepare for sleep, notice how your attention naturally narrows, how the world becomes simpler, less demanding. This narrowing is part of the process of falling asleep, part of how consciousness gradually releases its grip on experience. External stimuli become less compelling, less able to capture attention. Internal sensations, the softness of your pillow, the rhythm of your breath, the weight of your body, become more prominent. This inward shift is natural and appropriate, a sign that your nervous system is preparing for rest. Don't fight it. Allow attention to do what it evolved to do. Adapt to circumstances, shift according to need, and narrow when narrowing serves you. Tonight, you don't need to pay attention to anything in particular. You can let the spotlight dim, let the filter relax, let information wash over you without needing to analyze or respond. Rest in the knowledge that attention will return when you need it, that this capacity will be restored by sleep, ready to serve you again tomorrow. For now, simply breathe and let your eyes grow heavy, heavy as stone worn smooth by patient water. In a world saturated with entertainment, with screens and sounds competing constantly for attention, boredom has come to seem like an enemy, a state to be avoided at any cost. But psychology reveals a different truth. Boredom, properly understood, is not a problem, but a gift. Not a deficiency, but a signal. An indication that your mind is ready for something different, something more meaningful. The capacity to experience boredom evolved as a motivational mechanism, a gentle push toward exploration, creativity, and growth. Without boredom, without that uncomfortable sense of restlessness and dissatisfaction, human beings would remain forever stuck in comfortable routines, never venturing into new territories, never developing new skills, never discovering new possibilities. Research has shown that periods of boredom, when embraced rather than immediately escaped, can lead to increased creativity and problem-solving. When you're bored, when your mind is not occupied with external stimuli or specific tasks, it enters what neuroscientists call the default mode network, a state of consciousness associated with daydreaming, mind-wandering, and spontaneous thinking. In this state, your brain makes unexpected connections, combines ideas in novel ways, and generates insights that wouldn't emerge during focused attention. Many creative breakthroughs occur during periods of apparent idleness, during walks or showers, or moments of staring into space, when the conscious mind has released its tight control and allowed deeper processes to bubble up. Boredom helps you identify what truly matters to you. When an activity leaves you feeling bored, that boredom is valuable information. It tells you that this activity is not engaging your interests, not challenging you appropriately, not meaningful to you in this moment. Conversely, when you find an activity that eliminates boredom, that captures your attention so fully that time seems to disappear, you've found something worth pursuing, something aligned with your values and capabilities. Boredom is a compass, pointing you toward what matters and away from what doesn't, patient and reliable as magnetic north. Children, left to their own devices without constant entertainment, naturally move through boredom into imaginative play. They create worlds from cardboard boxes, invent games with arbitrary rules, and tell stories to themselves. This capacity for self-generated entertainment is crucial for development, teaching children that they can be sources of their own engagement, that they don't always need external stimulation, and that their minds are capable of creating interest where none seem to exist. Adults retain this capacity, though it may grow dormant from lack of use. The ability to sit with boredom, to resist the immediate impulse to reach for a phone or turn on a screen, is a skill that can be cultivated, strengthened through practice, like a muscle growing stronger with exercise. Does a particular quality of rest that comes from allowing boredom to exist without fighting it, from sitting quietly with nothing particular to do, and no urgent need to fill the emptiness. This rest is deeper than the rest that comes from passive entertainment, for it doesn't require your attention or engagement. It is the rest of simply being, of existing without purpose or agenda, like a stone resting in a riverbed, patient and still, while water flows over and around it. This kind of rest has become rare in modern life, but it remains essential for mental health, for creativity, for the sense of being grounded in yourself, rather than constantly pulled in directions determined by external forces. Tonight, as you lie in darkness, you may experience moments of boredom, moments when sleep doesn't come immediately, and there's nothing to do but wait. Rather than treating these moments as problems to be solved, as uncomfortable states to escape, try welcoming them. Let boredom be what it is, a neutral state, a space between activities, a pause in the constant stream of stimulation. Notice what arises in this space. Perhaps memories surface, or random thoughts, or bodily sensations you normally ignore. Perhaps nothing at all arises, and there's just quietness, emptiness, the gentle void from which all experience emerges and to which it returns. Breathe into the boredom and let your eyes grow heavy. Trust is perhaps the most fundamental psychological bond between human beings, the foundation upon which all other relationships rest. Yet trust is not simple or instantaneous. It builds slowly, gradually, through countless small interactions extended across time, like sedimentary rock, forming layer by microscopic layer over millions of years. Each small promise kept, each moment of reliability, each instance of honesty adds a thin layer to the structure. Each betrayal erodes it, wearing away what has been built. The process is patient, inexorable, governed by principles deeper than conscious intention. Psychologists who study trust have identified several key components that must be present for trust to develop. First, there must be competence, the belief that the other person is capable of doing what they promise. Second, there must be benevolence, the sense that they care about your welfare, that they have your interests at heart. Third, there must be integrity, the perception that they are honest, that they follow ethical principles, that their actions align with their words. And fourth, there must be consistency, a pattern of reliability extended across situations and time. Trust requires all of these elements working together, interweaving like threads in a tapestry, creating something stronger than any single component. The neuroscience of trust reveals fascinating details about how the brain processes social reliability. When you trust someone, when you feel safe in their presence, your brain releases oxytocin, the same hormone involved in bonding, in comfort, in the warm sense of connection. This oxytocin reduces activity in the amygdala, the brain's alarm system, allowing you to feel relaxed rather than vigilant. Your stress response quiets. Your nervous system shifts from a state of defensive readiness to a state of social engagement, opening pathways for communication, empathy, and understanding. Trust is not just a cognitive judgment, but a whole-body experience, a physiological state that allows for connection and vulnerability. Interestingly, trust seems to have a baseline level that varies between individuals and cultures, shaped by early experiences and social environment. Some people, having grown up in consistent, reliable environments, develop what psychologists call secure attachment, a basic sense that the world is trustworthy, that others will generally be there when needed, that it's safe to depend on people. Others, having experienced inconsistency or betrayal early in life, develop more insecure patterns, approaching relationships with wariness, expecting disappointment, and finding it difficult to fully rely on anyone. These patterns are not fixed or immutable. They can change through new experiences, through relationships that provide consistent evidence of trustworthiness. But they change slowly, requiring patience and repeated disconfirmation of old expectations. The ability to trust also applies to yourself, to your own capabilities and judgment. Self-trust develops through the same gradual process as trust in others. Through repeated experiences of following through on commitments to yourself, of making reasonable judgments, and of being honest about your own motivations and limitations. When you trust yourself, you feel more confident, more willing to take appropriate risks, and more able to act decisively. When self-trust is low, you second-guess every decision, doubt your own perceptions, and feel paralyzed by uncertainty. Tonight, as you surrender to sleep, you perform an act of trust. You trust that you will wake again, that consciousness will return, that the world will still be there in the morning. You trust your body to continue breathing while you're unconscious. Trust your heart to keep beating, and trust the ancient processes of sleep to restore and refresh you. This trust is so fundamental, so deep, that you probably never think about it consciously. But it's there, underlying everything, making sleep possible. Without this basic trust, you would remain vigilant, unable to release control, unable to let consciousness dissolve. Rest now in this deep trust, this faith in the continuity of existence, patient and enduring as stone. Breathe and let your eyes grow heavy. Emotions, those powerful currents of experience that color every moment of consciousness, follow patterns and rhythms that psychology has only begun to map. Like ocean waves, emotions rise and fall according to principles that can be understood even if they can't always be controlled. Each emotion has a natural trajectory, a typical shape and duration, an arc that begins with activation, rises to a peak, and gradually subsides. Understanding this wave-like nature of emotions can bring comfort during difficult feelings and wisdom during pleasant ones, revealing that all emotional states are temporary. All will pass in time, as seasons turn. Research on emotional dynamics has shown that most emotions, when allowed to follow their natural course without interference, last only about 90 seconds in their pure, intense form. That initial surge of anger or fear or joy, the moment when the emotion first registers in consciousness, accompanied by its characteristic bodily sensations, fades relatively quickly if you simply allow it to be present without trying to suppress it or amplify it. What extends emotional experiences beyond those 90 seconds is usually not the emotion itself, but your thoughts about the emotion, your stories about what it means, your attempts to hold on to pleasant feelings or push away unpleasant ones. This insight has profound practical implications. When you're experiencing a difficult emotion, sadness, anxiety, frustration, you can remind yourself that this intensity will pass, that you don't need to do anything to make it go away except allow it to be present, to run its course, to rise and fall like a wave that approaches the shore and then retreats. Resisting the emotion, fighting against it, trying to immediately escape the feeling, often paradoxically expends it, like struggling in quicksand, only makes you sink faster. Acceptance, on the other hand, creates space for the natural resolution that will occur on its own, given time. The emotional waves are influenced by deeper tides, by hormonal cycles, by sleep quality, by blood sugar levels, by chronic stress or security. by the countless physiological factors that create the ocean in which moment-to-moment emotions rise and fall. Some days, the baseline is calm, and emotional waves are gentle, easy to ride. Other days, the sea is rougher, and even small triggers create disproportionate responses. This variability is normal, expected, part of being a biological organism whose psychological states emerge from physical processes that are constantly changing. On difficult days, when emotions feel overwhelming or out of proportion, it helps to remember that the rough seas will calm again, that this too shall pass, that tomorrow or next week the baseline may be different, as the weather changes across seasons. Interestingly, cultures vary significantly in how they understand and regulate emotions. Some cultures encourage the full expression of feelings, viewing emotional display as honest and authentic. Others value emotional restraint, seeing excessive expression as immature or selfish. Some cultures have words for emotions that other cultures don't recognize or name, suggesting that the emotional landscape itself may be partly shaped by language and cultural context. Yet beneath these cultural differences lie universal human experiences. All people across all cultures experience fear in threatening situations, joy in connection, sadness in loss. The waves may have different names, different accepted expressions, but the underlying patterns are part of our shared evolutionary inheritance. As you prepare for sleep tonight, notice whatever emotions are present without judging them or needing them to be different. If there's contentment, let it be contentment. If there's worry, let it be worry. If there's sadness or joy or nothing in particular, simply acknowledge what's there. Each emotion is a wave that will rise and fall in its own time, each feeling a visitor that will stay for a while and then depart. You don't need to cling to pleasant emotions or push away unpleasant ones. You need only to breathe, to remain present, to allow the natural rhythm to unfold. Let your eyes grow heavy, knowing that emotions are like weather, constantly changing, ultimately beyond control, but not permanent, never permanent. Breathe and rest. Your face contains 43 muscles capable of creating thousands of distinct expressions, and these expressions communicate emotional states with a clarity and immediacy that words often lack. This system of nonverbal communication evolved over millions of years, long before language, serving as a universal medium for transmitting information about internal states from one individual to another. When you see someone smile, their facial muscles create a specific configuration that your brain recognizes instantly, automatically, triggering your mirror neurons and creating a corresponding emotional response in your own nervous system. This recognition happens so quickly, so effortlessly, that you're usually not aware of the complex processing involved. Remarkably, certain basic emotional expressions appear to be universal across human cultures. The psychologist Paul Ekman, after decades of research, including studies of isolated tribes in New Guinea, who had never been exposed to Western media, identified 6 emotions that are expressed and recognized similarly across all cultures: happiness, sadness, fear, anger, surprise, and disgust. Each of these emotions has a characteristic facial configuration that people everywhere produce when experiencing the emotion and recognize when seeing it in others. This universality suggests that these expressions are not learned through culture, but encoded in our biology, shaped by evolution because they solved important social problems for our ancestors. Consider the expression of fear. Eyes widened to take in more visual information, eyebrows raised and drawn together, mouth open to allow for quick breathing. This configuration occurs automatically when you encounter something frightening, And when others see this expression on your face, they immediately understand that danger may be present, even if they hadn't yet identified the threat themselves. The expression serves as a rapid communication system, faster than words, allowing groups to coordinate responses to threats. Similarly, the expression of disgust, nose wrinkled, upper lip raised, tongue protruding slightly, signals contamination, warning others to avoid potentially dangerous substances. Each universal expression evolved, after all. It served a function because it increased the survival chances of our ancestors by facilitating social coordination and communication. But facial expressions don't just communicate emotions to others. They also influence your own emotional state through a phenomenon called facial feedback. When you smile, even if you don't feel particularly happy, the act of smiling sends signals to your brain that are associated with positive emotion, and your mood often improves slightly as a result. When you furrow your brow in concentration or worry, this expression can intensify feelings of stress and concern. Your face is not just a display screen showing internal states to external observers. It's part of the system that generates and regulates emotions themselves. The connection between facial expression and emotion is bidirectional, each influencing the other in a continuous loop. As you lie in darkness tonight, your face gradually relaxes, releasing the micro-expressions and subtle tensions that accumulate through the day. The muscles around your eyes soften, letting go of the slight squint that focuses vision. The muscles around your mouth relax, allowing your jaw to go slack. Your forehead smooths, releasing the furrows of concentration or concern. This relaxation is part of how your body knows it's time for sleep, part of the signal that tells your nervous system that vigilance is no longer needed, that it's safe to rest. Notice how good it feels to let your face completely relax, to release all the tiny efforts of expression and communication. Your face, that most expressive part of you, rests now like everything else, patient and still. Breathe and let your eyes grow heavy. Deep within your body, operating entirely outside conscious awareness, an incredibly sophisticated defense system stands constant guard against threats too small to see. Your immune system, refined across hundreds of millions of years of evolution, patrols your bloodstream and tissues, identifying and neutralizing bacteria, viruses, and other pathogens that attempt to invade. But what makes this system truly remarkable is not just its ability to fight current infections, but its capacity to remember past encounters, to learn from experience in a way that parallels the learning of the nervous system itself. When your immune system encounters a new pathogen for the first time, it takes several days to mount an effective response. Specialized cells must identify the intruder, generate antibodies that can bind to it specifically, and coordinate a multifaceted attack involving different types of immune cells. This initial response eventually succeeds most of the time, but it's slow, and during those days of ramping up, you feel sick as the battle rages within you. However, after the infection is cleared, something extraordinary happens. Your immune system creates memory cells, long-lived cells that remember this specific pathogen and will respond much more quickly if they ever encounter it again. These memory cells can persist for decades, sometimes for your entire life, standing ready like experienced soldiers who have fought this enemy before and know exactly how to defeat it. This is why you typically only get diseases like measles or chickenpox once. After the first infection, your immune system remembers and responds so quickly to any subsequent exposure that you never become sick again. The pathogen is neutralized before it can establish an infection, so efficiently that you're usually unaware the exposure even occurred. Vaccination works by exploiting this same system, introducing a harmless version of a pathogen or a piece of it to train your immune system without requiring you to actually suffer through the disease. The memory is created without the cost of illness, a triumph of medicine built on an understanding of natural biological processes. The immune system's memory is not stored in the brain or in any central location, but distributed throughout your body in the form of these specialized cells, circulating constantly, waiting patiently for an encounter that may never come. It's a form of bodily wisdom, of biological learning that happens entirely without consciousness, without thought, without any awareness on your part. While you sleep tonight, while your conscious mind wanders through dreams or dissolves into darkness, your immune system continues its patient work, patrolling, remembering, protecting you from threats you will never know existed because they were neutralized so efficiently. Sleep itself supports immune function in multiple ways. During deep sleep, your body increases production of certain immune cells and inflammatory proteins that fight infection. People who are sleep-deprived show reduced vaccine responses. Their immune systems don't form memories as effectively when rest is inadequate. The relationship is bidirectional. Your immune system affects your sleep, which is why you often sleep more when you're sick, and your sleep affects your immune function. The two systems communicate constantly, coordinating their activities for your benefit, patient and thorough, as processes refined across eons. Tonight, as you rest, trust in this invisible protection, this biological intelligence that operates without your direction or awareness. You don't need to consciously coordinate your immune response any more than you need to consciously direct your heart to beat. The ancient systems will do their work, will continue the patient task of protecting you, of maintaining the boundary between self and not self, of remembering dangers encountered and overcome. Rest now, knowing you are protected, knowing that biological wisdom extends far deeper than conscious thought. Breathe, and let your eyes grow heavy, heavy as stone. In the modern world, we are surrounded by choices: what to eat, what to wear, what to watch, what to buy, which career to pursue, which person to date, which life to live. At first glance, more choices seem better than fewer. After all, doesn't freedom mean having options? Doesn't autonomy require selection from multiple possibilities? But psychological research has revealed a counterintuitive truth. Beyond a certain point, increasing the number of choices actually decreases satisfaction and well-being, creating anxiety rather than liberation, paralysis rather than empowerment. This phenomenon, studied extensively by psychologist Barry Schwartz, manifests in multiple ways. When faced with too many options, people often experience decision paralysis, becoming so overwhelmed by the need to evaluate and compare that they end up making no decision at all. Even when they do choose, they tend to feel less satisfied with their choice, wondering if one of the other options might have been better, experiencing what psychologists call regret and opportunity cost. The presence of unchosen alternatives haunts the chosen one, diminishing its luster, creating a nagging sense that something was left behind. Moreover, when options are numerous, people tend to hold themselves responsible for making the perfect choice. With only a few options, it's reasonable to say, "I did the best I could with what was available." But with hundreds or thousands of options, there's an implicit expectation that you should find the optimal one, that anything less represents a failure of judgment or effort. This expectation creates pressure that transforms choice from an opportunity into a burden, from an exercise of freedom into a test of competence. The psychologist's term for people who feel compelled to make the best possible choice rather than simply a good enough choice is maximizers. and research shows that maximizers tend to be less happy, more anxious, and less satisfied with their decisions than satisficers, people who stop searching once they find an option that meets their criteria, even if better options might exist. The problem is partly cognitive. Your working memory and processing capacity are limited, and evaluating many options requires more cognitive resources than evaluating a few. But it's also emotional and existential. When choices are limited, you can blame circumstances, fate, or the external world for constraints. When choices are unlimited, you bear full responsibility for outcomes. Strangely, constraints can be liberating, reducing the burden of possibility, narrowing focus, and making decisions simpler and less fraught. Ancient wisdom traditions understood this, paradoxically, which is why so many spiritual practices involve voluntary limitation: fasting, simple clothing, routine schedules, restricted activities. These limitations aren't punishments, but recognitions that freedom often requires boundaries, that the infinite possibility can be paralyzing, that sometimes you need less choice, not more, to find peace. The monastic life, with its strict rules and limited options, creates space for other things: contemplation, community, focus, precisely because it removes the constant need to decide, to choose, to evaluate alternatives. As you prepare for sleep tonight, notice how few choices this moment contains. You are lying down, breathing, allowing your body to rest. There's nowhere else you need to be, nothing else you need to decide, no options to evaluate or opportunities to weigh. This simplicity is not poverty, but abundance, not limitation, but freedom. In sleep, choice disappears entirely. You don't choose what to dream. Don't decide when to move through sleep stages. Don't select which memories to consolidate. Everything happens automatically, guided by ancient processes that require no input from conscious decision-making. Rest in this freedom from choice, this release from responsibility, this surrender to processes wiser than deliberation. Let your eyes grow heavy, knowing that tonight, at least, the burden of infinite possibility has been lifted. Breathe and simply be. Pain is perhaps the most universally feared experience, the sensation we most desperately wish to avoid. Yet, psychology and neuroscience reveal that pain is not a simple message traveling from body to brain, not a direct readout of tissue damage, but a complex perceptual experience constructed by your nervous system, shaped by context and meaning and expectation in ways that can seem almost magical. Understanding the true nature of pain, how it's created, why it varies, how it can be modulated, offers not just intellectual insight, but practical tools for managing suffering, for finding relief even when physical circumstances remain unchanged. Consider a striking finding from pain research. The same stimulus can produce wildly different pain experiences depending on context. In one classic study, soldiers wounded in battle reported much less pain than civilians with comparable injuries sustained in accidents. The difference wasn't in the wounds themselves, but in what the wounds meant. For the soldier, the wound meant survival, meant going home, meant escape from danger. These meanings somehow reduced the pain experienced. For the civilian, the injury meant disruption, threat, loss. These meanings amplified pain. The conclusion is inescapable. Pain is not simply out there in the tissue, but constructed in here in the brain, shaped by interpretation and context. The brain's pain construction process involves multiple regions working together. Signals from damaged tissues travel up the spinal cord to the thalamus, then branch out to various cortical areas. some processing the location and intensity of sensation, others processing the emotional and motivational aspects, and others still integrating this information with memory and expectation. The experience of pain emerges from this distributed processing, from the synthesis of sensory signals with psychological factors. This is why placebos can reduce pain even when no actual medication has been administered. The expectation of relief, the belief that treatment has been received, actually changes how the brain processes incoming signals, reducing the pain experience even though the tissue condition hasn't changed. Moreover, the brain can actually inhibit pain signals from reaching consciousness through a process called descending inhibition. Neural pathways from the brain to the spinal cord can block or reduce pain signals before they're fully processed, like a gatekeeper deciding which messages get through and which are turned away. This system can be activated by various factors, by expectations of relief, by distraction and focused attention elsewhere, by strong emotions, and by certain medications that enhance the brain's natural pain suppression abilities. The fact that the brain has built-in mechanisms for pain suppression suggests that managing pain level is adaptive, that sometimes it's useful to feel pain fully, and other times it's useful to reduce pain sensitivity, depending on circumstances. Chronic pain, pain that persists for months or years, often involves changes in the nervous system itself, rather than ongoing tissue damage. The pathways carrying pain signals can become hypersensitive, firing more easily, amplifying signals out of proportion to actual danger. The brain regions processing pain can become hyperactive, creating pain experience even when peripheral signals are minimal or absent. In a sense, the nervous system learns pain, becomes good at producing it, like any skill that improves with practice. This is why chronic pain is so challenging to treat. The problem isn't just in the tissue, but in the neural processing itself, which has been reshaped by experience. Tonight, as you lie in darkness, scan your body gently for any discomfort. Perhaps there's tension in your shoulders, an ache in your lower back, a slight headache. Rather than trying to make these sensations disappear, simply notice them with curiosity and acceptance. Notice that the sensations themselves are just sensations, pulses of neural activity, data being processed. The suffering comes not from the sensations themselves, but from your reaction to them, from the desire for them to be different, from the fear of what they might mean. Breathe into any discomfort, allowing it to be present without fighting it. Notice how acceptance itself sometimes reduces intensity, how relaxation creates space around pain, softening its edges. Let your body rest, knowing that healing continues even in darkness, even in stillness, as patient as all biological processes. Let your eyes grow heavy and release the day's tensions into the supporting surface beneath you. You are connected to other people in ways more complex and far-reaching than direct friendships suggest. Each person you know is connected to others, who are connected to still others, creating a vast web of relationships that extends across communities, nations, and continents. This web is not just metaphorical. Social network analysis reveals precise mathematical structures in how people connect, patterns that emerge consistently across cultures and contexts, principles that govern the flow of information, emotion, and influence through populations. One of the most striking findings in social network research is the small world phenomenon, sometimes called 6 degrees of separation. Despite the oath containing billions of people, most individuals are connected to most others through surprisingly short chains of acquaintance. Mathematical studies suggest that the average length of the shortest path connecting any two random people on Earth is about 6 steps. You know someone who knows 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 almost anyone. This remarkable compression occurs because social networks are not random, but structured in specific ways, with certain individuals serving as bridges between different clusters, shortcuts that dramatically reduce average path length. Your position in the social network affects your psychology in profound but often invisible ways. Research has shown that emotions spread through social networks like contagions. If your friend becomes happier, you're more likely to become happier. But the effect extends further. If your friend's friend becomes happier, someone you may not even know, you're also slightly more likely to become happier. The effect continues to 3 degrees of separation before fading, meaning that your emotional state is influenced by and influences people you've never met through chains of connection invisible to conscious awareness. The same pattern holds for other states and behaviors. Obesity, smoking, loneliness, even suicide all show network effects, spreading along relationship pathways like ripples extending from stones dropped in still water. This interconnection means that you are less autonomous, less independent than you might imagine. You exist not as an isolated self, but as a node in a network, constantly influenced by and influencing others. Part of a larger system whose properties can't be reduced to the sum of individual characteristics. Your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors emerge partly from this network position, from the flows of information and influence that reach you through relationship channels. In a sense, there is no purely individual psychology, only psychology embedded in a social context, shaped by connection, created through relationship. Yet most people are poor at estimating their network position, at understanding how they fit into the larger structure. You know your immediate connections, but have little direct knowledge of how those connections fit into broader patterns, where the network is dense or sparse, which relationships serve as bridges and which as dead ends. The network shapes you invisibly, like water shapes fish who have no concept of water, like gravity shapes birds who don't think about force while flying. As you drift towards sleep tonight, reflect on the invisible threads connecting you to others, not just the people you know directly, but the vast web extending far beyond immediate awareness, linking you to countless other minds through chains of relationship too complex to fully map. You are more connected than you realize, more embedded in community than isolation suggests, part of a larger whole that breathes and moves and changes according to principles that transcend individual psychology. This connection continues even as you sleep, even as consciousness dissolves. You remain part of the network, influenced by distant changes you'll never consciously perceive, influencing others through chains you'll never directly observe. Rest in this knowledge of connection, knowing you are never truly alone, never fully separate from the larger human tapestry. Breathe and let your eyes grow heavy. Time seems like it should be simple, objective, and the same for everyone. A minute is a minute, an hour is an hour, measured precisely by clocks and calendars, marching forward at a constant rate. Yet your subjective experience of time bears little relationship to these objective measurements. Time stretches and compresses, speeds up and slows down, bends and warps, according to psychological principles that operate entirely independently of the physics of temporal flow. Understanding these principles reveals something profound about consciousness itself, about how your mind constructs experience from the raw material of sensation and memory. The most commonly noticed time distortion occurs during novel or emotionally intense experiences, when time seems to slow down. Your first day at a new job feels longer than your 100th day doing the same routine. A car accident unfolds in what seems like slow motion. A vacation to a new place feels longer while you're experiencing it than a week at home following familiar routines. This slowdown occurs because your brain encodes more memories during novel or intense experiences, creating denser mental recordings. When you later recall these experiences, when you mentally review what happened, the density of memories makes the duration seem longer. More information stored creates the impression of more time elapsed. Conversely, time seems to speed up as you age. Each year feels shorter than the year before. Childhood summers stretch toward infinity, while adult years rush past in a blur. This acceleration happens partly because novel experiences become rarer with age. A 5-year-old encountering the world for the first time experiences almost everything as novel, encoding rich memories constantly. A 50-year-old following established routines experiences relatively little that's genuinely new, encoding sparser memories. Looking back, the 5-year-old's year seems longer because the memory archive is so much denser, while the 50-year-old's year rushes past because so little was encoded. So few unique markers distinguish one week from another. Attention also shapes time perception dramatically. When you're bored, paying attention to time itself, each moment feels slow, dragging, interminable, the watched pot that never boils. When you're absorbed in a captivating activity, attention focused entirely on the task, time disappears, and you emerge hours later, startled by how much time has passed. This state, called flow, involves such complete absorption that temporal awareness vanishes entirely. You're not consciously experiencing the passing of moments, but rather existing in a timeless present, where past and future collapse into an extended now. Prospective time judgments, estimates made while an experience is unfolding, differ systematically from retrospective judgments, estimates made after the experience has ended. While waiting in line, time feels slow. Prospective judgment emphasizes boredom. Looking back later, the wait seems brief. Retrospective judgment finds few distinctive memories, suggesting short duration. While on vacation, time feels rich and full. Prospective judgment registers high engagement. Looking back, the vacation seems like it ended too quickly. Retrospective judgment compresses the experience, making the whole seem shorter than it felt while happening. Even the neural basis of time perception remains mysterious. Unlike vision or hearing, where specific sensory organs and brain regions clearly process particular types of information, there's no dedicated time organ or single brain region responsible for temporal experience. Instead, time perception seems to emerge from patterns of neural activity distributed across multiple brain systems, from the integration of change detection and memory encoding and attention allocation. Time, in a sense, is constructed by your mind rather than perceived directly, built up from other processes rather than directly sensed like light or sound. Tonight, as you lie in darkness, notice how time feels. Without clocks to anchor you, without obligations to mark the passing of minutes, time becomes elastic, malleable, slippery. Sometimes moments seem to last forever, attention dwelling on breath or sensation, stretching the present until it fills everything. Sometimes you drift, losing track entirely, finding yourself surfacing from absence without any sense of how long you were gone. This malleability is not a malfunction, but the natural state of temporal consciousness, revealed when external constraints are removed, when clock time no longer disciplines subjective experience. Let time flow at whatever pace it chooses tonight. You have nowhere to be, no schedule to keep, nothing that requires temporal precision. Breathe and let your experience of time soften, loosen, dissolve like salt in water. Let your eyes grow heavy, knowing that in sleep, time disappears completely, that you'll cross hours in what feels like an instant, emerging in the morning without memory of the interval between. Rest now and let time do what it will. From the moment of birth, you began learning lessons that no one explicitly taught, absorbing rules and patterns from the social world around you through processes too subtle to recognize, too pervasive to escape. This learning, called socialization, shapes not just behavior but perception itself, teaching you what to notice and what to ignore, what to value and what to dismiss, even how to experience your own emotions and desires. The process is so thorough, so complete, that you experience its products as natural, as obvious, as simply the way things are, rather than as one possibility among many, one set of arbitrary conventions that could have been different. Consider something as basic as personal space, the distance you maintain from others during interaction. This varies dramatically across cultures. In some societies, people stand close during conversation, close enough that you can feel their breath, close enough that an American might feel invaded, uncomfortable, backed against a wall. In other societies, people maintain a greater distance, a spacing that Mediterranean cultures might experience as cold, as unfriendly, as rejection. Yet no one sits you down and teaches you the rules. You learn by observation, by tiny corrections, by the subtle discomfort that arises when distance is wrong, and the ease that comes when it's right. By adulthood, you follow these rules automatically, unconsciously, feeling them as natural preferences rather than learned conventions. Or consider emotional expression. Some cultures encourage open display of feelings, crying at funerals, shouting in anger, laughing loudly in joy. Others value restraint, seeing emotional control as maturity, excess expression as childish or rude. Children raised in these different contexts learn not just how to behave, but how to feel, internalizing their culture's emotional norms so thoroughly that they experience emotions differently, actually feeling less intensity in contexts where expression is discouraged, more intensity where expression is encouraged. Culture doesn't just regulate the outer expression of inner states, it shapes the inner states themselves. The process of socialization involves multiple mechanisms working simultaneously. Children learn through direct instruction, yes, but more powerfully through observation and imitation, watching what others do and unconsciously copying. They learn through operant conditioning, receiving subtle rewards for culturally approved behaviors and subtle punishments for violations. They learn through identification with caregivers, wanting to be like admired others, and therefore adopting their mannerisms, values, and perspectives. And perhaps most powerfully, they learn through the process of internalization, where external rules gradually become internal values, where "I must do this because others expect it" transforms into "I want to do this because it's right," where social requirements become genuine preferences. By the time you reach adulthood, so much has been internalized that you can barely distinguish what's truly yours from what was learned, what reflects your authentic self from what reflects cultural programming. This isn't necessarily problematic. You need shared conventions to coordinate with others, and need internalized norms to navigate social life efficiently. But it does mean that much of what you experience as freely chosen is actually determined by processes outside your awareness, that your autonomy is more limited than it feels, that you are more a product of social forces than an independent agent creating yourself from nothing. Yet, awareness itself creates possibility. When you recognize that your preferences, values, perceptions, and even emotions are partly products of socialization rather than inherent features of reality or self. You create space for examining them, questioning them, perhaps changing them. You can't escape socialization entirely. You'll always be embedded in culture, always influenced by others. But you can become more conscious of the process, more able to accept some aspects and resist others, more genuinely autonomous, even while acknowledging that autonomy is never absolute. Tonight, as consciousness fades, as the socially constructed self loosens its grip, you may glimpse something beneath or beyond socialization, not a pre-social self, for no such thing exists after infancy, but perhaps a quality of awareness that predates and transcends particular cultural contents. In sleep, you drop the mask of social propriety, release the constant monitoring of impression management, let go of the effort to be someone. What remains is simpler, more fundamental, more universally human. Rest in this dropping away, this nightly dissolution of the socialized self. Tomorrow you'll put it on again. Resume playing your roles, following your scripts. But for now, for these hours of darkness, you can rest from the work of being a culturally appropriate person. Breathe deeply and let the weight of social expectations slip away like a cloak falling from your shoulders. Let your eyes grow heavy, heavy as ancient stone, and rest in the space beneath all learned behavior. Patient and still, across the centuries, wisdom traditions have counseled gratitude as a path to contentment, as an antidote to suffering, as a practice that transforms perspective and enriches experience. Modern psychology, with its careful experiments and controlled studies, has confirmed what sages intuited. Gratitude genuinely changes your brain, your body, your relationships, your subjective well-being in measurable and profound ways. The practice is simple: noticing and appreciating what you have rather than focusing on what you lack. But the effects ripple outward through multiple domains of life, creating a positive spiral that can gradually reshape your entire experience of being alive. Research on gratitude interventions has revealed striking findings. When people are asked to write down 3 things they're grateful for each day, to keep a gratitude journal recording moments of appreciation, their happiness increases significantly within weeks and remains elevated for months afterward. They report better sleep quality, fewer physical symptoms, more optimism about the future, greater life satisfaction. They're more likely to exercise, to attend regular checkups, to take care of their health. Their relationships improve. They're more helpful, more generous, more forgiving, better able to navigate conflicts constructively. The effects are not subtle or marginal, but substantial, comparable to the effects of antidepressant medication for some measures. The neurological basis of these changes involves multiple systems. Gratitude activates regions of the brain associated with reward and pleasure, including areas rich in dopamine receptors. It dampens activity in the amygdala, reducing the stress response and promoting feelings of safety and calm. It strengthens connections between brain regions involved in emotional regulation and perspective-taking. Over time, with repeated practice, these neural changes become more stable, creating lasting alterations in how your brain processes experience. You literally become better at noticing positive aspects of life, more attuned to reasons for appreciation, and more capable of finding meaning in ordinary moments. But gratitude is not just a feel-good practice or a way to trick yourself into contentment. It represents a genuine shift in attention, a reorientation toward what's actually present rather than what's imagined or desired. Much suffering comes from focusing on the gap between current reality and preferred alternative. I have this, but I want that. Things are okay, but they could be better. I'm safe now, but future threats may emerge. This focus on lack and potential problems is not irrational. It evolved because anticipating threats and seeking improvement promoted survival. But when this threat detection system runs constantly, when you're always focused on what's wrong or missing, you lose contact with what's actually working, what's actually present, what's actually worthy of appreciation. Gratitude redirects attention from the gap to the ground, from absence to presence, from what might be to what is. This shift doesn't require denying problems or pretending difficulties don't exist. You can acknowledge challenges while also recognizing supports, can face difficulties while also appreciating resources, and can work toward change while also valuing the present. Gratitude and improvement seeking are not opposites, but complementary, each necessary, each enriching the other. Gratitude provides the emotional sustenance for long-term effort, the sense of sufficiency that makes striving sustainable rather than desperate. Interestingly, gratitude seems to be particularly powerful when directed toward people. When you feel and express appreciation for what others have done for you, for ways they've helped or supported or cared. Expressing gratitude strengthens relationships, makes others feel valued, and creates positive cycles of mutual appreciation and support. The person expressing gratitude benefits. The person receiving expression benefits, and the relationship itself benefits, becoming warmer, more secure, and more resilient. Gratitude is inherently relational, acknowledging that you don't exist in isolation but are supported by others, dependent on others, enriched by others' presence and contributions. As you lie here tonight, call to mind 3 things from the day, any 3 things, large or small, that you feel grateful for. Perhaps it was a kind word from someone, or a moment of beauty, or simply the fact that you had enough to eat, a place to sleep, a body that carries you through the world. Hold each one gently in awareness for a moment, letting yourself feel the appreciation, the sense that life contains gifts, that existence offers moments worth savoring. Don't force the feeling or manufacture false enthusiasm. Just notice what's there. Whatever genuine appreciation arises when you direct attention toward what's working rather than what's broken. This practice is itself a gift you give yourself, a way of training your attention to notice what might otherwise be overlooked, to find sustenance in what's present rather than constantly reaching toward what's absent. Over time, this training changes you, reshapes your neural pathways, makes gratitude more accessible, more automatic, more natural. You begin to notice beauty more readily, appreciate kindness more deeply, and find meaning in ordinary moments that might previously have passed unnoticed. The spiral continues, patiently and gradually, each moment of gratitude making the next moment of gratitude slightly more likely. Rest now, allowing gratitude to be your last conscious thought before sleep, the feeling that carries you across the threshold into darkness. Breathe and let your eyes grow heavy with appreciation for this moment, this breath, this quiet space of rest. Who are you? The question seems simple enough, yet psychology reveals that the answer is far more complex, more multiple, more context-dependent than common sense suggests. You are not a single, unified, consistent entity, but rather something more like a collection of processes, a community of subselves, a constantly shifting coalition that maintains enough continuity across time to create the illusion of stable identity, while actually changing dramatically across contexts and development. The self, in other words, is not a thing you are, but a story you tell, a performance you enact, a construct that emerges from memory and social interaction, rather than an essential core that precedes experience. Consider how differently you behave in different contexts. You present one face to your parents, another to your friends, another to your romantic partners, another to authority figures, and another to strangers. These aren't deceptions or false masks. Each is a genuine aspect of you, a version that emerges in particular relational contexts. You don't consciously decide to be different in these contexts. The differences arise automatically, shaped by the expectations and dynamics of each relationship, by the history you share with different people, by the roles you've been assigned or have chosen to play. If all these people gathered in one room, they might describe you in completely different terms, each convinced their version is the real you, none recognizing that all versions are equally real and equally partial. The narrative self, the sense of having a continuous identity extending from past through present into future, is constructed through memory and storytelling. You create a coherent autobiography by selecting certain memories and organizing them into narratives that make sense, that show development, that reveal themes and patterns. But this construction is inevitably selective and distorted. You forget far more than you remember, and what you remember is shaped by current concerns, colored by present emotions, revised in light of what came later. Your past self is not directly accessible, but only through memory, and memory is fundamentally reconstructive rather than reproductive, more like imagining what might have happened than replaying what actually did. Moreover, the contents of self, the traits, preferences, values, beliefs you identify as yours, change constantly across development. The person you are today shares continuity with the person you were 10 years ago. But if you compared detailed descriptions, you'd find substantial differences. Some changes are obvious. You've acquired new knowledge, developed new skills, and had experiences that shifted your perspective. But other changes are subtler, harder to notice from inside, because you're always experiencing yourself from the present moment, unable to directly compare the current self with the past self. The river of self flows constantly, never the same water twice, yet always recognizably the same river. Some psychologists argue that the unified self is actually an illusion created by the brain, that consciousness is not centralized but distributed, not unified but multiple. At any given moment, different neural networks are processing different information, pursuing different goals, generating different impulses. The sense of unified consciousness emerges from the brain's tendency to create coherent narratives, to smooth over conflicts and contradictions, to present a simplified story about what's happening rather than the full complexity of parallel processing. You experience yourself as one person making conscious decisions, but neuroscience suggests something messier. Multiple processes competing and collaborating, with consciousness often arriving late to the party, creating post hoc explanations for decisions already made by unconscious processes. This doesn't mean the self is meaningless or that your identity doesn't matter. Even if the self is constructed rather than essential, even if it's multiple rather than unified, even if it's narrative rather than factual, it's still real in its effects, still shapes your experience, still provides the organizing principle for your life. The story you tell about who you are influences what you do, what you notice, and what meanings you create. The question is not whether the self exists, but how to relate to it skillfully, how to hold your identity lightly enough to allow growth and change, while firmly enough to maintain integrity and continuity. As you drift toward sleep tonight, notice how the self loosens its grip, how identity becomes less definite, less crucial, less demanding. In the hypnagogic state between waking and sleeping, the boundaries of self become permeable, fuzzy, sometimes dissolving entirely. Thoughts arise without a clear thinker, images appear without a clear observer, Sensations occur without a clear boundary between body and world. This dissolution is not death but rest, not loss but release. A nightly reminder that the self you carry through the day is not as solid or permanent as it seems, that beneath the construction lies something more fluid, more open, more mysterious. Let the edges soften tonight. Let the story pause. Let the performance end, knowing it will resume tomorrow, refreshed by this interval of not needing to be anyone. Breathe and let your eyes grow heavy, releasing the burden of selfhood into the darkness that asks nothing and judges nothing. Your body knows things your conscious mind has forgotten or never learned. Wisdom is encoded in your tissues, in the autonomic nervous system, in the ancient brainstem structures that regulate fundamental life processes without requiring conscious attention or deliberate control. This bodily wisdom has been refined across hundreds of millions of years of evolution, shaped by countless ancestors who survived challenges that killed others, who passed on genetic instructions for building nervous systems capable of responding appropriately to complex, ever-changing environments. When you listen to your body, when you trust its signals and follow its guidance, you access intelligence older and deeper than thought. Consider the simple act of breathing. You don't need to consciously control your respiratory rate. Your brainstem monitors carbon dioxide levels in your blood and automatically adjusts breathing frequency and depth to maintain homeostasis. When you exercise, breathing accelerates automatically. When you relax, it slows. When you're anxious, it becomes rapid and shallow. When you're calm, it becomes slow and deep. This regulation happens constantly, effortlessly, and more precisely than conscious control could achieve. Yet you can also breathe voluntarily, can deliberately slow or speed your breath, and can use conscious breathing to influence states that are normally automatic. The breath exists at the boundary between voluntary and involuntary, between conscious and unconscious, serving as a bridge between these domains. The body also stores emotional information, holds memories that consciousness has forgotten. Trauma, in particular, seems to be encoded not just in explicit narrative memory, but in bodily patterns. Muscle tension, breathing restrictions, postural habits, movement limitations. People who experience traumatic events sometimes develop chronic pain or other physical symptoms years later, long after the event itself has been consciously processed and understood. The body remembers what the mind has tried to forget, maintains vigilance against dangers that may no longer be present. Therapeutic approaches that work directly with the body, through movement, through breathing, through awareness of sensation, can sometimes release these stored experiences, allowing completion of interrupted survival responses, restoring flexibility and ease. Your body also communicates through sensation, offering constant feedback about your physical and emotional state. Hunger tells you to eat. Thirst signals dehydration. Pain indicates potential damage. Fatigue suggests the need for rest. Sexual arousal points toward desire for connection. These sensations are not arbitrary or meaningless, but informative, providing crucial data for navigating the world successfully. Yet modern life often involves overriding these signals, eating when not hungry, staying awake when exhausted, suppressing desires that feel inconvenient or inappropriate. Over time, this override can lead to disconnection from bodily wisdom, to a life lived primarily in the head. cut off from the guidance that the body constantly offers. Interoception, the sense of the body's internal state, varies dramatically between individuals. Some people are highly interoceptive, acutely aware of heartbeat, breath, digestion, muscle tension, subtle shifts in arousal and energy. Others are less interoceptive, relatively disconnected from internal sensations, experiencing the body primarily when something goes seriously wrong. This variation has psychological consequences. High interoception is associated with greater emotional awareness, stronger intuition, and better ability to recognize and respond to one's own needs. Low interoception correlates with alexithymia, difficulty identifying and describing emotions, and with various mental health challenges. The good news is that interoception can be trained, enhanced through practices like body scanning, mindfulness meditation, or yoga that specifically direct attention to internal sensations. As you lie here now, bring gentle awareness to your body. Notice the contact points where your body meets the surface beneath you: your heels, your calves, your thighs, your buttocks, your back, your shoulders, your head. Notice the temperature of your skin, the feeling of air moving in and out of your nostrils, and the slight movements of your chest and belly with each breath. Notice any areas of tension or relaxation, any places that call for attention. Don't try to change anything. Don't try to fix or improve. Simply notice. Receive the information your body is constantly offering. This noticing is itself a practice, a way of re-establishing connection with bodily wisdom, of learning again to trust the signals that evolution has given you. Your body wants to rest now, wants to release into sleep, wants to allow the restoration processes that occur during deep rest. Listen to this want. Honor it. Trust that your body knows what it needs, that the tiredness you feel is not weakness, but an appropriate response to the day's demands, that sleep is not indulgence, but a biological necessity. Let your body lead you into rest, following its ancient wisdom into the darkness that heals and restores. Breathe deeply and let your eyes grow heavy, trusting the body that has carried you through this day and will carry you through tomorrow. Thoughts arise in your mind like birds appearing in the sky. You don't create them deliberately. Don't consciously manufacture each mental movement. They simply appear, emerging from background processes you don't control or fully understand, shaped by current circumstances and past experiences and neural patterns established across years of living. This spontaneous emergence of thoughts is both ordinary and mysterious, so familiar that you rarely question it, yet so strange when examined closely that it can seem almost magical. Buddhist psychology likens thoughts to weather, clouds drifting across the sky of awareness, sometimes dense and stormy, sometimes light and scattered, sometimes absent entirely, leaving clear blue emptiness. This metaphor captures something important. Thoughts are not you, not essential to your being, but rather events occurring within awareness, temporary visitors that arrive, linger briefly, and depart. You don't control weather, don't choose whether it rains or shines, yet you're not at weather's mercy either. You can take shelter from storms, can enjoy sunshine when it appears, can maintain equanimity through changing conditions. Similarly with thoughts, you don't control what thoughts arise, yet you're not obligated to believe every thought, follow every mental impulse, or identify with every passing notion. Cognitive psychology has identified many patterns in how thoughts flow, how they associate and connect, and lead from one to another. Thoughts move by association. One thought triggers related thoughts through connections forged by experience. emotional similarity, conceptual relationship, or simple temporal contiguity. If you think of summer, related thoughts arise automatically: beach, vacation, heat, childhood memories of long days outside. These associations happen faster than consciousness can track, creating the subjective experience that thoughts arrive fully formed rather than being assembled from components. Thoughts also show biases, systematic distortions in how they represent reality. You tend to remember negative experiences more vividly than positive ones, to anticipate threats more readily than opportunities, and to notice problems more than things working smoothly. This negativity bias evolved because ancestral organisms that overlooked dangers died more frequently than organisms that erred on the side of caution, that assumed rustling in bushes might be a predator rather than the wind. The bias serves survival, but creates suffering in modern contexts where most rustles really are just wind, where constant vigilance against unlikely threats prevents relaxation and contentment. Rumination, repetitive thinking about problems, regrets, worries, grievances, represents a particular pattern where thoughts loop endlessly without resolving. You replay conversations, analyzing what you should have said differently. You worry about future scenarios, imagining how things might go wrong. You review past mistakes, condemning yourself for choices that can't be changed. This mental churning feels productive, feels like problem solving, but it rarely leads anywhere useful. The problems that can be solved through thought generally yield to relatively brief analysis. Problems that resist solution after extended thinking usually require action rather than more thought, or acceptance rather than more analysis. Metacognition, thinking about thinking, offers a way out of the thought stream's pull. When you can observe thoughts as thoughts rather than being absorbed in content. When you can recognize, I'm having the thought that X, rather than simply thinking X, you gain freedom. The thought becomes an object in awareness rather than the entirety of awareness itself. From this perspective, you can choose which thoughts to engage with and which to let pass, can recognize unhelpful thought patterns without being controlled by them, and can maintain some stillness even while mental weather swirls. Tonight, as you rest here, notice thoughts arising and passing. Don't fight them, don't try to stop thinking. That effort usually backfires, creating tension and generating more thoughts about why thinking won't stop. Instead, simply watch the thought stream flow, like sitting by a river, watching water move past. Thoughts about the day, about tomorrow, about nothing in particular. Let them all pass through without grabbing onto them, without following them downstream. Each thought is just another cloud drifting across the sky of your awareness, temporary and insubstantial. Behind the clouds, beneath them, awareness itself remains clear, spacious, undisturbed by mental weather. Rest in that awareness, that spacious presence that exists before and after thoughts, that witnesses thoughts without being thoughts. Breathe and let your eyes grow heavy, releasing the need to think, to analyze, to figure anything out. Let the mind rest, patient and still as stone at the bottom of a clear pool. Deep within your brain, in the microscopic spaces between neurons, chemical messengers drift across synaptic gaps, binding to receptors and triggering cascades of electrical and chemical changes that create your subjective experience of consciousness, emotion, motivation, and thought. These molecules, neurotransmitters, are the vocabulary in which neurons speak to each other, the medium through which neural networks coordinate their activity, the physical substrate of everything you experience as mental or psychological. Understanding these chemical symphonies reveals that your moods, desires, and thoughts are not abstract or immaterial, but grounded in molecular reality. In the slow dance of neurotransmitters refined across hundreds of millions of years of evolution, consider serotonin, perhaps the most widely known neurotransmitter due to its role in depression and the popularity of medications that increase its availability. Serotonin contributes to feelings of contentment, well-being, and emotional stability. When serotonin levels are balanced, the world feels manageable, challenges feel surmountable, and setbacks feel temporary. When levels are low, everything darkens, problems seem insurmountable, the future looks bleak, and energy for engaging with life diminishes. Remarkably, most of your body's serotonin is produced not in the brain, but in the gut, with about 90% synthesized by specialized cells in the intestinal lining. This gut-brain connection helps explain why digestive problems often accompany mood disorders, why stress affects digestion, and why what you eat can influence how you feel. Dopamine, another crucial neurotransmitter, mediates motivation, reward, pleasure, and learning. When you accomplish something, complete a task, solve a problem, receive recognition, dopamine surges, creating a sense of satisfaction and reinforcing the behavior that led to success. This system evolved to guide learning, to help organisms identify which behaviors lead to good outcomes and should be repeated. But dopamine responds not just to actual rewards, but to anticipated rewards, creating desire, the feeling of wanting that pulls you toward goals. When dopamine signaling is disrupted, motivation collapses. Activities that previously seemed worthwhile now feel pointless. Goals that once excited now seem irrelevant, and life loses its forward momentum. GABA, gamma-aminobutyric acid, serves as the brain's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter, quieting neural activity, creating calm. When GABA binds to receptors, it makes neurons less likely to fire, reducing excitation and promoting relaxation. Many anti-anxiety medications work by enhancing GABA activity, essentially turning up the brain's natural calming system. Alcohol also increases GABA activity, which explains its relaxing effects at low doses. Without adequate GABA, the brain becomes overactive, anxious, unable to settle, too many neurons firing too frequently, creating noise and chaos rather than organized processing. Norepinephrine contributes to alertness, arousal, and the stress response. When you encounter something surprising or potentially dangerous, norepinephrine levels surge, sharpening attention, increasing heart rate, and preparing for action. This system evolved for survival in threatening environments where quick responses meant life or death. But in modern contexts, where threats are often psychological rather than physical, chronic activation of this system creates anxiety, hypervigilance, and the exhausting sense that you must remain constantly alert to navigate dangers. These neurotransmitter systems don't operate independently, but interact constantly, creating complex patterns that give rise to the full spectrum of human experience. Your emotional state at any moment reflects the particular balance across multiple systems. Not just a single chemical level, but the ratios and relationships between different neurotransmitters, the sensitivity of various receptor types, and the efficiency of reuptake mechanisms that clear neurotransmitters from synapses. This complexity is why mood and consciousness feel so nuanced, so variable, so influenced by countless factors, from sleep to diet to stress to social interaction. Sleep profoundly affects neurotransmitter systems. During sleep, your brain clears out metabolic waste products that accumulate during waking, rebalances neurotransmitter levels, and resensitizes receptors that have been activated throughout the day. Without adequate sleep, these systems become dysregulated. Serotonin balance shifts, dopamine signaling becomes less efficient, GABA's calming influence weakens, and norepinephrine's arousing effects become exaggerated. This is why even one night of poor sleep can dramatically affect mood, motivation, emotional regulation, and cognitive function. The chemical symphony requires regular restoration, regular periods of reduced activity that allow systems to reset. Tonight, as you rest, these restoration processes begin. Your brain starts the slow work of rebalancing, of clearing, of resensitizing, of preparing the chemical systems that will support tomorrow's consciousness. You don't need to do anything to facilitate this process, except allow it to happen. Except surrender to sleep and trust that ancient mechanisms will handle the details. Your neurochemistry knows how to restore itself, has been doing this every night of your life, and follows patterns established across millions of years of mammalian evolution. Breathe deeply and let your eyes grow heavy, knowing that chemical balance is being restored, that the molecular foundation of well-being is being rebuilt while you rest. Patient and thorough as all biological processes. And so, dear traveler, we pause here in our journey through the psychology of sleep and consciousness. We have explored 45 profound truths together, wandering through memory and emotion, through the brain's ancient wisdom and the mind's endless mysteries. But the night is long, and more wonders await in our next gathering. For now, simply rest with what you've learned. Let these truths settle into your unconscious mind like seeds planted in fertile soil. Sleep deeply, knowing that when you return, we will continue our gentle exploration together. Until then, breathe slowly, release completely, and surrender to the darkness that holds all knowledge, all peace, all rest. Good night.